You're watching Moontower Soccer's Story of the Week, where Landon Cottam and Jeremiah Bentley discuss this week's most important, consequential, and interesting Austin FC news. Thanks for listening to Moontower Soccer. This week, we'll review a 6-point week at home for Austin FC, including victories over Houston and Sporting Kansas City. We'll also preview the San Jose match this weekend with Apple TV's Heath Pierce. And then we also have some breaking news as of about, 30 minutes ago, and there's more coming out as we go about Emiliano Rigoni. Tom Bogert is reporting that he's been placed on waivers by Austin FC. We'll get into that here in a moment about what all that means and for Rigoni and for Austin FC going forward. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Yeah, and you're dead on this news. So I think we each have a note to ourselves to check back on Twitter at some point while we're recording this, and whatever we say at the beginning of the show may be obsolete by the time we reach the end of the show. But what a newsy and exciting week. I just feel like this cloud of enthusiasm over all of Austin FC fandom, sort of given how the games turned out and this news. So why don't you go through what we know as of what we believe to know, Tom Bogert official, which as we know is pretty much official, about this Emiliano Rigoni situation right now.
Yeah, so the Bogert tweet reads, Austin FC has placed DP winger Emiliano Rigoni on waivers, sources tell Paul Tenorio and me. And then followed up with a quote tweet shortly after that saying, Rigoni had a clause in which his contract for 2025 auto-triggered if he made 12 appearances in 2024. He has played 11 times this year, which is Bogert is pointing out that's why this is happening right now. It's because if he plays one more time, thank you, Claudio Reyna, then his contract would be auto-triggered. I've been saying, people have been bringing up, what if Rigoni has an auto-trigger in his contract? And I was like, surely not. And surely if there is, it's something difficult to achieve. 30 appearances or 15 goal contributions, but 11 appearances or 12 appearances, good lord. I don't know that Claudio Reyna was gonna get another job in this sport, but as news gets around about the Ring deal and this one, which is even worse, this man's never gonna work not in that kind of job in this sport again. He might find something, but he's not going to be in charge of signing players ever again.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty evident thing. So let's talk through what we know or believe to know about the waiver part of this. So Rigoni is theoretically a player on waivers, which means that any team, he's now available to any MLS club beginning the first business day after clubs are notified. Basically, anybody who wants Emiliano Rigoni's contract can pick up Emiliano Rigoni's contract. I don't think that we expect that anybody will be super in love with picking up Emiliano Rigoni's contract at the current level. So what does this mean in the real world?
Yeah, I'm looking through the rest of the rules. I found another place where it's under the buyout rules that say before a player is considered a buyout, the league in its discretion may place the player on waivers to be made available to all clubs. And so, although we're in the waivers state right now, this very well might be just the first step in buying out his contract. And so either way, it seems like Rigoni is going to be gone. There is one part about the waiver rules that I'm still a little murky on. If you read through them, like Jeremiah said, the basics of waivers is Austin FC says, if anybody wants this guy, you can have him. You just have to pay his salary. And if nobody wants him, then they can still buy him out at that point. If they do want him, there's a part of the roster rules that reads essentially like it's a bit of an auction where a team can make an offer as to how much of his salary, his budget charge they're willing to pick up. And then another team can make another offer, and whatever the best one is, they'll go with. What it doesn't say in those rules is, say a team does pick him up at a discount, is Austin FC then stuck with the rest of his budget charge? That's the part that I'm not clear on.
Which, yeah, that part makes it, less of an appealing deal to Austin, and maybe less likely that Austin would go out and get an immediate replacement. Although, half an hour ago, I think along with other people, were like, well, this clearly shows Austin's making a move in the summer. And then we got the second Bogert tweet, and now maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe we'll find out something else about it. But yeah, either way, I think the summary is the Emiliano Rigoni era in Austin is over. Seems like a great dude, good guitar player, not particularly productive on the field, and never like looked comfortable, or I don't. He never looked comfortable or happy, you know, on the field, or didn't seem like it at least. He never really fit into the scheme. So good for Austin for moving on from that.
Yeah, and so for what it means for Austin going forward is we're all kind of hoping that at the very least they would buy down Alex Ring and sign a designated player. We're gonna. I didn't mention this in the opening. We also have new roster. Salary. The new salary release from the MLS Players Association. So we'll get into that a bit more. With that, the roster profiles that MLS released recently, it seems very likely that Austin's going to have plenty of money to buy down Alex Ring. With Emiliano Rigoni on the way out as well, they could potentially sign two new DPs this summer. And so, with as good as the team is playing right now, and like still missing some of that high end talent, right? If they can bring in that high end talent and even kind of integrate them by the end of the season, like that gives me a lot of hope for this team. Things don't always go perfectly. We shouldn't expect them to, but they they can only be better than what the Reina administration did with some of these contract clauses.
Yeah, for sure. And so I feel we could probably sort of transfer into the week, because I think one of the things even before today that became, I feel like, very evident over the last few weeks is that, one, I feel like Roto kind of undersold what the effects of what he was going to be able to do during the winter, because we came into this season thinking like his hands are tied, there's no money, nothing's going to happen, and now we've got four players that came in during this offseason already. This is before another guy we'll talk about in the summer, at least one more. Obrian, Rubio, Heinzike, Biru, all better than who they replaced. And so even before today, I feel like while there's a lack in high end attacking quality, and Rigoni wasn't the answer there, like the floor is a lot higher than it was. And I think you see this in a week like this week, where Austin plays 3 games in 8 days and has to manage minutes and do some substitutions and stuff. That they do have the players to be able to make those moves and not have a lot of drop off. The center back depth is as strong as it's ever been. I think the fullbacks are about to be that way too. Like the midfield's pretty deep. Like everywhere other than an attack, Austin has options, and that has not always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of why Austin has looked so good in this last handful of games, or at least better. It's not always been good in every game, but much better than what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. I think we have to talk about Danny Pereira. His game against Sporting Kansas City was absolutely phenomenal, and we'll get into that as we kind of dive into the specifics of it. But I already thought before that game that just the last, like, Driussi came back from injury, right? And that was part of the change. Around that same time is when we moved Danny back to the 6. And about that time is also when I thought Danny just like really started to turn his game up to the next level a little bit. And that really showed in this Sporting Kansas City game. We'll talk about a little bit the difference in positions, but I think that aside, just like his fitness, his defensive mindset, and just like seeing the game quicker on that end, because offense hasn't always been the problem, right? He's been quite proficient on that end of the ball. Defensively, his reading the game, his fitness, his speed, his aggressiveness without going too far and getting cards, he's just really stepped up his game. And like we've been talking about this for years at this point, right? Like if Danny can make that next step, he's gonna go on to do big things. He'll be a big sale to Europe. I had stopped believing that. I didn't believe we were going to sell Danny to a big European team. At the very most, like maybe like a mid-tier Portuguese team, or like to Belgium, or a lower tier like Dutch team or something like that. If he, from the last 5 or 6 games, the amount he's improved in that little stretch, if he can continue that, or even just keep playing at the level he has the last handful of games, like that comes back onto the table.
Yeah, and the other thing that we saw from him, this was a little bit during the offseason, where he kind of got featured more in the like in the on social media and things. Like there's a little bit, there's some development of sort of like leadership and maturity that we've seen of him too, and I think that's like echoed. You see the echo of that in his play. But it's just like, yeah, Danny's kind of grown up. Now you did call him still a little stinker, I think, today in some slack. Uh,
because he is.
but in a,
I
yeah,
think
true, in a positive and good natured way. He's like the, yes, I
I
agree.
don't think those things are mutually exclusive though. And I think like probably Diego Rubio was a bit of a little stinker when he was younger. And he's learned to use that and to channel it into like still being able to be a leader, be a positive impact in his team and in his locker room. I don't think I don't think it's a bad thing that Danny Pereira is a little stinker. I think it's fun and probably like brings a lot of joy to the locker room. But combining that mindset with being a professional, taking your craft seriously, and like training like a pro, living like a pro, um, that's where a lot of people will say like that's the next step is like you taking this seriously, having the mentality to like suffer through the difficult and boring life that it takes for you to you're sacrificing having fun or doing these other things or having these other experiences that people get to have if they're not an athlete and like accepting that and just kind of taking that on is part of what makes these great people so great. And I think you can do all those things and still be just like a fun guy to have around.
Yeah, I mean, and what a delight he has been because of that. And then, so I think we've talked about a 6 point week. I imagine anybody listening probably knows that Austin won both matches, but we get the 1-0 win over Houston, 3-2 over Sporting KC. I think that one common thing among both these in both these matches is Austin loses possession battle in both. I think we had 41% in the Houston match, 42 in SKC. Win both matches fairly convincingly. I feel like against Kansas City. Like I didn't feel like that one was in a lot of doubt, even though Kansas City scored first, and had higher X goals for over both matches too, which means whatever it means, but it kind of shows that it's not a fluke. So is this like this seems like a trend now at this point in time where Austin is playing the game differently than they have in the past, and I think it's a credit to Coach Wolf.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the one thing that I noticed on my rewatch of the Houston game, and listeners, please bear with us. We're doing two games today. I take a lot of notes and spend a lot of mental energy reviewing these games. When I have to do it twice, things get real blurry real fast. But so if I say the wrong thing happened in the wrong game, please be patient with us. But during the Houston game, that was the first one, right?
Right.
The midweek game against Houston. There's a moment where we are playing out of the back. I felt like the back line and Stuver did a really good job of being patient and kind of playing that chess match with Houston's press because Houston was not just running around with their hair on fire. They were waiting for that first pass and then springing traps. And the center backs and Stuver were very patient and very mindful of what Houston was trying to do and making sure that whatever they did didn't play straight into what Houston wanted them to do. And as they were doing that, Stuver and Julio, like just a really good job of playing that little game there. There's a moment really early in that game where they break the press, find Driussi in a little pocket, and he turns and starts driving. And Josh Wolf is yelling at him about 15 yards away, so he could hear him saying, "Go, go, 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 go!" Like to turn up the field, play vertically, drive at that back line after you break that first line. And that is a thing that like we've not seen them do that. We've never seen Wolf gesture like that in those moments. It seemed like they were all very happy to once they break that line, okay, let's set up and just play with the ball a little bit. It's like that's not what's happening in this last stretch that things have changed so much. They are trying to once they get in that space, play vertically, play more aggressively in those moments. And I think that's part of why we're seeing these possession numbers go down. Is it's not that we're booting it long and giving up the ball. It's just that we're playing faster and getting the ball into those spaces a lot quicker. And um, which I think pairs up a bit more with the defensive game plan, being a bit more stingy. And then once you get past those moments, play a bit more aggressively and try to go quickly in those areas. If you like this video, you can listen to the full episode at moontowersoccer.com or wherever you get your podcasts.